Welcome back. We continue to pay tribute and homage to the life and legacy of the late Dr. Hage G. Geingob. Now, during this year's World Radio Commemoration, President Ombudsman commended the late President Hage Geingob for his role and contribution towards media freedom. His role includes promoting freedom of the press, which has laid a solid foundation for the development of a democratic society. Namibia is ranked #1 on the African continent when it comes to media freedom. John Nakuta, the media ombudsman, now joins us with his take. Good afternoon, Mr. Nakuta, and welcome to this special tribute broadcast.
Good afternoon, Denver, and thank you very much for the opportunity granted and for the invitation.
First things first, where were you on Sunday, the 4th of February 2024, when news broke of the death of President Geingob?
Yeah, in bed. Woke up around about 7. Got the news from my partner, and I told her, no, it's not true. And I immediately thought about what happened on the 1st of January this year. I was in South Africa, and there was this news going around that Thabo Mbeki died. So I said, no, it's fake news. Because remember that Friday also, we were told by the government that the president is in the stable, it's in the ICU, but stable. So I said, no. But she said, no, it seems to be true. So I called, for example, Uhuru Dampers, or I text him. And I think I also text Job Amupanda. And Uhuru basically said, no, but the president, Nangolo Mbuma, the acting president by then, just made an announcement. I said, wow, that really was, that came to a shock, as a shock to me. And of course, it's sudden, and you don't expect someone just like that, especially after you've heard that he was in a stable condition. Yeah. So I was in bed basically. Yeah.
Talk to us about some of the interactions that you had with the late President Hage Geingob.
Yeah, I will not claim to have known the president on a very personal and intimate level, but there are two instances that really stood out for me. In 1990, I lost the elections as Secretary General in Keetmanshoop of I was the Secretary General by then of the Namibia National Teachers Union, NANTU. I came back very disturbed, very disappointed. After a week, after I've got myself together, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister, who was then Hage Geingob, 1990. Very short, very sweet, and I asked for a personal audience. I think a day or two later, I got a telephone call from his personal secretary. The president wants to, or the prime minister wants to know, why do you want to see him? And I was very frank. And I told this person that, tell the prime minister I want to be redeployed. That's the order that I want to say. It's like, and is that it? Yeah, she said, yeah. And apparently she conveyed the message. 2 days later, I got the, you may come. I walked into the office. I thought I would be meeting the Prime Minister then alone. There's this whole entourage. John Motora, who's now our, the Deputy Prime Minister, he was then the Minister of Education. He was there with his Undersecretary of Education, the Permanent Secretary, and George Chimata, Muyewa, all these stopwicks. And in fact, the Prime Minister then told Comrade John, this is your meeting. He called me Comrade John. This is your meeting. Tell us what is it that you are calling, that you get at us for. And I said...
You, after all, had sought the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he asked me, and I said, I want to be redeployed. I was the Secretary General. I feel that I've gained skills over the period, and I don't want to go back to school, because by then I was for a teacher at a junior secondary school in Siova, Rietfontein. And he said, believe it or not, I think you must be not so much redeployed, but we can use you somewhere. But, and this is my take home from that meeting, he told me that, as you know, that there are rules. You need to advertise, the posts need to be advertised. I can't just take you and appoint you, because tomorrow people will be talking about me. But the minister will get in touch with you. A week later, I got a a request from the minister. He wants to see me, and we talk about it, the deputy, the director. Long story short.
The due diligence was followed, and you got repurposed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's the last point.
Just very briefly, please.
Yeah, very briefly. And so the Kapofi, but then the, the secretary to cabinet, he called me and said, is it true that we hear that you're not a SWAPO member? Because the president wants to appoint you, but we also hear stories that you are COD. Long story short, I lost the opportunity there.
You didn't get repurposed.
I didn't get
Very well, John. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. Now, you are also the media ombudsman of this country, a very important office that you hold. How would you describe the media landscape during the tenure of President Geingob?
Very free. People, there are no threats of direct intimidation. Of course, the president, and I've listened to Gwen's speech, and I totally agree with her. Gwen's interview, not so much speech with you, saying something along the same lines that I would like to say is like the president seems to have a very thin skin, very sensitive. Sometimes I would say, Mr. President, to myself, was it really necessary to react in the manner that you have done so? But overall, the media was not intimidated, the media was not threatened, and so it was very, very free. And of course, he took pride in the fact that Namibia is having the freest press currently on the African continent, and we are amongst the top 20 in the world, way above countries like the United States of America and all these other big countries like France and all those things.
Thank you, John. The other matter that Gwen also raised during our engagement was that during his tenure, the Access to Information Act was passed, was in fact promulgated, although it is yet to be operationalized. So that is a milestone.
Totally agree.
Apart from that milestone, which are the other milestones during his tenure, and which are the persisting gaps?
Yeah. Would you mind just go back? The act was passed in December 2022. It's almost a year and some odd. The act is still not implemented. And of course, they are talking about regulation. But I'm saying, and I said it at one of your platforms, we've got laws that was passed, for example, 8 years ago. And they are still, it took 8 years to do regulations. And we're just saying, we just hope, if we want to preserve the legacy of the president, because access to information is also inscribed into the Harambee 2 prosperity plan. And we know Harambee 2 expires next year in March. So if we really want to preserve the legacy of the president, then we must begin to implement and operationalize the Access to Information Act. Another sub point that I'm having is, for example, of course it happened also under the president's eye and guide, it's this notion of that all of us must register for SIM cards. It is having serious implications for investigative journalists, for example, because now, yes, in as much as you've got access to information, but there's a, in Afrikaans we would say neveneffecten, I don't know what is the word in English, is side effects of this regulation that you are implementing. How would it affect investigative journalists? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Any final thoughts this afternoon, John?
No, of course, like everyone else and with the nation, and as Bertha also just saying that we are all mourning. Is it mourning the passing of the president? A big tree has fallen, and whether we had disagreements here and there, because no one is perfect, but our country is poorer without Hage G. Geingob, and may his soul continue to rest in peace.
John, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and thank you for your continued service.